Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of React Native Radio. I'm Charles Max Wood, and today is Labor Day. We had an episode scheduled, but the guest didn't show up. Typically on a holiday, I wouldn't even show up, but since we had a guest scheduled, I wanted to make sure I was here for him. But I don't know what happened, so we'll see what happens. See if we can get him rescheduled. But none of my co-hosts showed up either, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and talk for a half hour or so, and just give you a quick rundown on some of the things that I've been thinking about.
Back when functional programming was making its resurgence, I found it really interesting that a lot of people were moving over there, and it almost felt like it was on hype, and I didn't really understand the power of functional programming until I learned Elixir. Elixir is a functional programming language. It's built on the Erlang virtual machine, and it really does some interesting things and makes you build apps in a different way. But what's really fascinating about it is the speed of the applications, the ability to distribute work easily, and just how it manages the functional programming and all of the nice things about it so that you don't have to worry about side effects and a lot of the other things that come out of functional programming. Plus, pattern matching in Elixir is a killer feature. If you're looking for a new language that you want to learn that is going to make a difference for you and give you the opportunity to challenge some of your thinking and find a new way of doing it, Elixir is a great way to go. And we have a podcast now on Elixir called Elixir Mix, and you can find that at elixirmix.com.
So lately I've been working on basically how to keep current course, an email course on devchat.tv. In fact, if you pop over there, a little pop-up will pop up after about 5 minutes or 5 seconds and, offer to let you into the course. And then I'll just send you about 10 or 12 emails. And it's just going to run through, hey, how do you stay current? In other words, how do you figure out what to learn? How do you make a plan? How do you figure out how you learn? And then essentially, the different ways to actually pick things up. And it's interesting. I started doing essentially a really long monologue for JavaScript Jabber, and then Joe Eames jumped in. He showed up about 20 minutes late. His life has been insane lately. And so, he was a little later than I was willing to wait around to get started. So, but we wound up having a really interesting conversation about it. You should go check that out. But there's just a little bit more to it that I wanted to talk to. And, nobody else is here to sort of derail my monologue. So I'm going to jump in and just run through this stuff. We may also take this episode and drop it into other shows as we need fillers. So we'll see where that winds up. But anyway, and a lot of this stuff's going to wind up also on the DevRev. I'm planning on starting that up this week. So anyway, let's go ahead and just get in and get started. One of the things that I find really interesting is that a lot of people will ask me, hey, how do you get started? How do you get, how do you stay current? How do you know what to talk about or what to learn about or what to move through things with? How do you know what to learn next? And people get really frustrated because they just don't know. And when you're talking about the way that you move forward with things, and you're talking about the direction and the pace of technology, there really isn't a roadmap. When you're getting started with a technology like JavaScript, there are several roadmaps out there, right? So you can follow any one of them, and it'll take you all the way from learning JavaScript all the way up into Angular or React or Vue, or just writing vanilla JavaScript, or doing something else that's interesting and creative and fun, and at the same time productive. And so you can follow any of those paths, and they'll teach you enough JavaScript to be dangerous, and then they'll teach you enough Angular to be dangerous, and then they'll teach you enough of a state management library. You kind of get the picture. But once you get past that, then it gets a little more tricky and a little less obvious. And so you have to go in and you have to start attacking things from the point of view of, okay, what do I need to be learning next in order to level up? And a lot of people get frustrated because they want to be leveling up. They just don't know how. And so I'm just going to walk through my process a bit. A lot of this is going to be in the email course, but definitely go check it out because I've got some other stuff in there. I've got some stories and just, some other things in there that will help you figure things out. But so what should you be studying? What kinds of things should you be looking at as far as staying current and keeping up on things? Well, a lot of times I turn it around and I ask people, why? Why do you want to stay current? Why do you, why are you worried about it? Why do you care about staying current? And it's interesting because about half of the answers I get are, well, I want to be competitive in the job market. And the other half of the answers are either something else or an I don't know. And the thing is that if you're going to put in a bunch of time to level up, you should probably have some idea what you want to level up to. And a lot of people will tell me, well, I don't know where I want to end up. And I'll tell them that's a really good thing to think about. At the same time, yeah, you don't have to have the final answer. And to be perfectly honest, it's funny because when I was full-time development in a career and working through things, I didn't know where I wanted to end up either, right? I just knew I wanted to get better. And I wanted to get better. Part of it was job competitive, mobility, competitive, blah, 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 right? But a lot of it was just that I was going to conferences, I talked to people, and I wanted to sound smart. And part of it was that I just really loved what I did and I wanted to get better at it. And so there were different reasons, but I didn't really have a solid thing. Now I generally do. I know about where I want to end up in a year or 3 years, but back then I didn't. And so I don't blame people for not knowing this, but I also highly encourage people to sit down and think about it. And the other thing is that even if you sit down and you figure out, okay, this is where I think I want to end up, and then you change it in 3-6 months, that's fine. That's totally fine. Because what'll happen is you're going to sit down and you're going to start figuring this stuff out. And then you're going to go, I've been studying toward this goal and I realized that goal doesn't fit me well. Well, guess what? You still learned something. You still made progress. You learned whatever it was that you were picking up over those 3 to 6 months toward that one goal. You just now know that there's somewhere else you're going to want to end up. And that's way more productive than just aimlessly running around and picking up new technologies. So I still encourage you to figure that out. And if you can't figure out anything out with any certainty, then just pick one and start heading that way, right? So maybe it's, well, I want to start speaking at more conferences, or I want to start a podcast, or maybe it's something around, I want to be the systems architect for the team that I'm on, or I want to be able to mentor more people. Or maybe it is just, I want to know the latest and greatest things so that I can go get a job with a company that's working on cutting edge technology. And that's all good too, right? When it comes down to the job search option and having the job mobility, unless you think you're going to be moving jobs within the next year, I just don't find that a very compelling argument. I find it a much more compelling argument to say, okay, well, I'm going to double down on the technologies that we're using here and spend as much time being as productive and valuable as possible at the job you're in. Because when it comes down to it, the kinds of companies that you want to work for, they may not use those same technologies. But what I found is that a lot of them will hire people for personality and aptitude as opposed to actual knowledge. And so if you wind up going over there and working for them and interviewing with them, and you basically get in and you have the conversation and you're like, well, we were using these 6 technologies. And so I went through this. I put myself through my own program to actually level up on those technologies. I would hire you in about 2 seconds, because I know that if I get you over here, then you're going to be putting in your time to learn the technology set that we're using. And so I'm just not going to mess around with, oh, well, darn, you've done Angular for the last 3 years and we do React here. I won't care, because I know that you're going to go in, you're going to do the work to figure out how to use React, and you're going to become one of the most valuable people on my team just by virtue of the fact that you're working to keep up. And so anyway, I guess I'm just talking through some of these scenarios, but you really do need to figure out where you want to end up. Now, one other thing with the job search that I'm going to just harp on for a minute, and this comes out of the Get a Coder Job book that I wrote last year, or I guess I finished it this year, but I wrote most of it last year, and I'm working on getting it published right now. But anyway, basically, if you are trying to get a new job, so let's say that you're on the job search, or you're going to be on the job search within the next few months, then what you want to be doing is go research the companies that you think you're going to want to work for. So let's say you want to work for Facebook, or maybe you want to work for a startup, right? And so you find out what startups are using these days, and then go out and learn those technologies, learn the things that are going to give you aptitude in those positions. And then once you have those skills down, you're going to be much more desirable to those people. And so then you can go in and you can have you're going to stand out more because you know the things that they're going to want to learn. And if you go in and you actually explain, I learned these things specifically because I knew I'd need them to get this job, that goes a long way, a lot longer way than the people who are saying, well, I worked at a place where, I'm a half hour early. That's the deal.
About 10 months before we started Ruby Rogues, which is the oldest podcast on devchat.tv, I went freelance. And one of the things that I figured out pretty fast is that I had no idea what I was doing. And I made a bunch of mistakes, but I also made a bunch of friends who were doing freelance. And we got together and we started a podcast called The Freelancer Show. And The Freelancer Show has been running about as long as JavaScript Jabber. But we talk every week about all of the things that we were learning and doing in freelancing and giving people advice on how to get their business started so that they could go out and be independent if that's what they wanted. Nowadays, I'm not on the show anymore, but we have terrific people like Reuven Lerner and Eric Dietrich that come on every week and talk to you about how they run their businesses and give other perspectives on things that you can do. So whether it's how to find clients or whether it's how to step in and start doing training or other programs or how to run a business, they have a ton of experience and they talk about all kinds of things that are going to help you pull things together and be successful as a freelancer. So whether you're thinking about moonlighting and trying it out or whether you're going whole hog and quitting your job, you should definitely check out The Freelancer Show. And you can find that at freelancershow.com.
All right, folks. So you might notice a slight change in the recording. I'm just going to call it out right here. So I started this episode on Labor Day. And it turned out that I had showed up a half hour early to the call, and that's why nobody was there for me. So I quit recording and then jumped on the call with the regular panel or with Josh and whoever our guest was last week. And yeah, I didn't finish this episode. And what was funny is this episode got pushed to my team, and my team listened to it and they were like, "You were on a roll. That was awesome." So I'm just going to keep going. And so where I left off was essentially where people are looking for jobs. And so they're gaining skills and things to learn those jobs. And what's funny is that is the common answer that I get for why do you want to stay current is so that you have job mobility. But I think that's kind of a false flag in some ways, because what you really should be looking for is a job that you really enjoy, that you're going to stay at. Now, I do want to point out that some people are going to get to a place where, they're in a job for a few years and then they realize that they want to move on, right? There's something else out there that they want. And so the job that they got when they got it was the right job for them at that time. But what really wound up happening was eventually they just grew. And so maybe they got interested in another framework or another technology or another, something else. And so they moved on to that. And so it's time to move on. Or maybe they're in the stage of their career where they're going to move into another company where they're the team lead or the CTO or something like that. And so again, the right job doesn't mean the right job forever. The right job is generally just, the right job for wherever you're trying to get to and what you're trying to do. But in a lot of other cases, you really do need to focus on the things that are going to get you where you want to be at, where you're at. And so if you're not looking for that job, as I said before, or you're not going to be looking for a job anytime soon, then looking for the things that are going to get you to those other places, be it I want to speak more, I want to be more well-known, I want to write a blog, I want, whatever. You need to be learning the things that are going to achieve those goals and not focus so much on the job mobility, because if you can create these other areas of or build up these other areas of your career, what you're going to find is that a lot of those things are things that are going to make you very attractive to employers later. And so you kind of get the job mobility and the in-demandness automatically out of these other things. So I don't love job mobility or, my ability to move to another place or whatever as a reason for the focus of your level up. I feel like a lot of these other things make better focuses because jobs and job searches are very short-term things. And these days, if you have enough experience, even if it's not directly with the technology that somebody wants you to know, if you have enough experience generally, then people are going to pick you up and they're going to hire you anyway. Now, I'm probably 15 to 20 minutes into this episode, and I want to keep going because there's more to this process than just knowing why you're doing it and then picking the right technologies to get you where you want, right? So, the job search is pretty apparent, right? I want to work at a company like X. Companies like X need me to have these skills, so I'm going to go learn those skills, right? For speaking, it's more the skills of figuring out what's in demand, figuring out what people want to hear about, learning how to submit calls for proposals, figuring out how to become the kind of speaker that they actually pay to come in and do keynotes, if that's what you're looking at. So you've got these other levels of things, right? These other skills, right? So if you're trying to get in as a speaker, then Toastmasters, or practicing in front of other people, or whatever it is. If you want to be writing blogs, then maybe you're going to spend a little bit of time learning about how to do SEO and do searches for things that are in demand there and things like that. If you're looking at leveling up to be that person at the company that is the architect and things like that, like we talked about before, then you're probably going to be looking at a little bit higher level code organization and things like that, those skills. And so, yeah, focusing on those areas is going to get you there. And then if you figure out that the job you're at doesn't offer the kinds of things that fall in with what you want, then you can move. And if you've been building those skills for a while, then it becomes pretty easy to just move along. But then it gets down to, okay, so how do I learn all this stuff? And I highly, highly recommend to people that they have a plan. Now, this is the one thing that's super nice for in the speaking arena, for example, if you go to Toastmasters, is that they give you a plan, right? They give you the competent communicator manual. Now, they've changed the system since I was in Toastmasters. I didn't get out by choice. I had something else that conflicted on the time front, and I couldn't find another club that really matched my schedule. And so I didn't go back. That's changed now. And so I may go back to the same club I was going to before. But they give you a competent communicator manual, and it has 10 speeches in it, right? And so the first one is, the icebreaker, and you introduce yourself. And then, there are different other aspects of speaking that it just gives you to practice those skills and build those skills. And then you're in a place where people are giving you feedback, right? Because somebody evaluates your speech and gives you the feedback that you need to become better. And so you get a lot of these things, and you get a program to follow to do it. With blogging, you could go pick up Darren Rouse's 31 Days to Build a Better Blog and do what it says, right? Because it's a step-by-step. Write this blog post, write this blog post, write this blog post, do this research, right? And so you can follow that along. You might go pick up an SEO course and just follow the program. So you get the idea, right? If somebody gives you a program for it, then you get a plan out of the box. And that's really the nice thing about some of these areas where they have courses, right? So you go take a course on Udemy or Thinkster.io or Pluralsight, there are a whole bunch of them out there, right? And so you go find the course on whatever it is you want to learn, and you learn it. Same thing with a book, right? Is that if you work your way through the book, then you kind of follow a plan, right? Now, some books are more reference material, and so they're not going to give you a plan per se. It's just going to be this vast amount of knowledge that they expect you to assimilate. Whereas others are more the tutorial angle, and they're expecting you to learn something while you're doing it. So they'll walk you through step by step. But that's kind of a quick and easy way to get to a plan. But if you don't have one of these, right, it's I want to become a software architect, right? I want that to be my title, and I want to be doing these kinds of things. And you're not finding kind of a ready-made plan out there, then make your own, right? Then just sit down and say, okay, well, these are the skills that I'm going to need to learn. And the easiest way to figure that out is to go talk to somebody who has the job that you want, right? And so then you sit down and you say, look, I want to get to the place where I can do what you do. What skills do I need, right? And so they'll give you a list. And then you can go out and then you can say, okay, well, I'm going to learn this, and then 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 I'm going to learn this, right? And so now you have a plan. Now you know these are the things that I want to go learn. This is the process that I'm going to go through in order to learn them. And this is where people get a little bit lost. And to be honest, mostly it's because they sit down and they make the plan and they're like, okay, well, now I need to know what courses I'm going to go take, or now I need to know what books I'm going to go read. And no. You just need that list of things that you're going to learn and make a plan out of it. Now, I think it's also helpful. But again, if it's to a particular goal, then you may just follow the plan just for that goal. But I think it's helpful if you're not as, time constrained to learn these things, is also to spend a little bit of time on some areas outside of the expertise that you have and that you're going to be building anyway. So for example, let's say you make a 6-month plan to become that senior architect, blah, 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 leader person, right? What you may want to do is just spend a couple weeks and make sure that you're spending a couple weeks learning something like blockchain or AI or, something that's up and coming, that's, that may be another avenue, right? It doesn't have to be your focus, but if you're staying on top of these things, or let's say that a new packaging system comes out that's not Webpack or Parcel.js and you're in JavaScript. So you spend a couple weeks learning it, even though it's not on your plan, just working those in periodically so that you're staying on top of the new technology coming out really helps. And you don't have to stay on top of everything, but spending a little bit of time on the things that look like they're going to, form the future is a good thing. And then spend the rest of your time working on those things that fit into the plan that are going to get you where you want to go. And really the plan is I want to, like I said, I'm going to learn this, A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then what you can do is you can stick to the plan. And if your plan changes, not your plan, but like if your outcome changes, right? So you start learning this stuff and you're like, this stuff is really boring. And, the more I talk to this architect guy that I've been talking to, the more I realize I really don't want that job. When I was in college, incidentally, I was a computer engineering major, which is basically designing chips in the silicon and then writing really low level programming, right? So I wrote a bunch of assembly code and C code in college. I did some Java and C++, but those were the computer science classes that I took, to kind of round out my major. But yeah, anyway, I decided at one point I wanted to be an attorney and I wanted to do patent law. And so what did I do? I went out and I got an internship. I'd been working in IT at the university for like 4 years. And I went and got an internship writing patent applications for a company that built like oil drilling bits and, technology to drill for oil. And, they were based over in Provo, Utah. Anyway, so I was working with them and understanding their technology well enough to write these patents, because if I had experience writing patents before I went to law school, then I felt like I'd have a leg up. And if I had experience doing it when I graduated, then it'd be much easier for me to get a job. And so I was thinking ahead that way. And so I went and got that internship. And I figured out after about 2 months that I hated it. I hated everything about that internship other than my friends. I had a friend that worked there that helped me get the internship. And, but man, I hated it. The technology was interesting. Writing the patent application sucked. And I'm like, man, if this is the job, I am out, and I am out hard. And what's funny is I went and took like the law school admittance test, the LSAT, and I was scoring in like the 85th, 86th percentile. So if I had wanted to go to law school, and I took a few courses too to help me get into law school at the university, I took like a logic course and a few other things. And so, I invested some serious time into this. And if I'd wanted to go to law school, I could have, right? Because I had a 3.0 GPA. When I graduated, I had a 2.97, I think. So generally, I leave that off of my resumes, incidentally, just because it's not a 3.0. But if I had really wanted to go to law school, I could have done it. But and my mom would have been happy because I would have gotten my a doctorate and all that stuff, right? So it would have checked a bunch of boxes for me, but I didn't like it at all. I didn't enjoy it at all, and so I bowed right back out. Went back to my IT job. My boss wasn't extremely excited about that, just because I had left and come back, and he felt like I had kind of flaked out on him. But I learned what, I learned that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so change of plans, right? And so my new plan was finish my computer engineering degree and then figure out what I'm going to do next. If I'm going to get a master's degree, or if I'm going to, go get a job. And so that's what I did. And so if you get into it and, 2 or 3 months in, you figure out, software architect, not where I want to go, right? You can change your plan. So you sit down and you say, okay, well, I'm going to scrap all this other stuff I was going to learn because it's not going to get me where I want to go anymore, because that's not where I want to end up, and then go do something else. And I'll tell you that's awesome, right? You figured stuff out. That's not where you wanted to go. And so then you can make a new plan and go back. So don't be afraid to scrap the plan. But if you're moving along that clip, that plan, and it looks like it's going to take you where you want to go, then stick with it. and stick it out all the way. What this brings up, though, is that, as you're following the plan, how do you do that, right? How do I go learn these things that I feel like I need to learn? Because some of it's going to be conceptual, right? Going back to that software architect thing, right? A lot of it's going to be more conceptual than practical, right? It's going to be, we're going to organize the code this way, and we're going to follow these development practices to get there. And we're going to do these kinds of things in the code in order to make everything talk nicely to each other, which some of it kind of bridges the gap, but a lot of it really is just, I understand how this stuff gets organized, and so I'm going to approach it in this way. And a lot of it's going to be down to other stuff where it's, okay, when I'm trying to choose which tools to pick, I'm going to pick these kinds of tools because X, Y, and Z. And, that's very conceptual. It's how do these things go together? And so, you're not going to be writing code so much as you're just going to be making decisions. And so, as you dive into this, and I'm saying this not ever having actually held the job title of software architect, right? So I may be mischaracterizing what that is, so you may be getting into some of this that's conceptual, and then other times it's going to be, okay, now we're going to actually structure this class in this way so that it plays nicely with all of the other pieces in the system. And so, yeah, you're going to wind up with some stuff that kind of bridges the gap. And so how do you learn it, right? Because the practical stuff, I feel like, at least for most people, not necessarily everybody, but for a lot of people, there's going to be some hands-on aspect to their learning that's going to have to happen in order for them to learn the practical hands-on stuff. And then a lot of the conceptual stuff, you really just have to make sure that you understand it. You understand the underlying principles, you understand how they're applied, you understand what the exceptions are, and then you can understand how to move up. So how do you make that plan so that you can learn all this stuff so that you can get to where you want to go? And even if you're going to be doing more practical stuff like working in Angular or React or Vue or Elixir or Ruby or whatever, right? There's still some conceptual ideas and principles that those languages are based on that you're still going to want to understand. So to some level, you're going to have to learn both. There's just no way around it. You're just going to have to learn both. But, depending on which direction you're going, some of it may be more hands-on than less. So when you're doing that, it's like, okay, so what do I do, right? Do I take a course? Do I, be that an in-person course or an online course, through video? Do I read a book? Do I listen to podcasts? There are a lot of different ways to learn, and knowing which one to do can be tricky too. Now, what I recommend to people is that you try at least one of everything and you give it a real try, because some of them are going to feel more natural than others. But at the end of the day, one thing that I figured out, like books, and I'll just give you an example on books, right? So I read a ton of books. Now, usually it's on business or, self-improvement or things like that, right? Though I have read quite a number of technical books about software, right? And initially they were just hard. It was hard to get into them. And then it's like, oh, there's all this stuff in here, and how am I going to remember it all and apply it all and blah, 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 blah. And so I didn't really love books as a way to learn. And what changed was after I had read a number of books and worked through a number of books and done the homework that came out of the number of books, that's when I figured out that, oh, wow, books are really valuable, but they're much more valuable when I actually put into practice what's in them. And so if I sit down and I draw out the pieces that I need to draw out, and I go after the things that really matter, and I make a plan to use that stuff, that's when it pays off, right? And so if you're reading a book about software architecture, even if some of it's more conceptual, then you can go build a couple of sample projects and figure out, oh, that's why this principle is so important, because when I leave it out, right, because you deliberately built two, one that used it and one that didn't, it was like, oh, this is why this principle is really valuable. But on this other side, this is where this principle made this other thing harder. Or, maybe it's all upside. I don't know. But you can figure that out, right? And so you get in, and with books, I found that you really do have to sit down and work through the mental exercises, and then sometimes work through the hands-on exercises just to figure this stuff out. But in the end, you're going to come out of it with a much stronger understanding.
When I'm building a new product, G2I is the company that I call on to help me find a developer who can build the first version. G2I is a hiring platform run by engineers that matches you with React, React Native, GraphQL, and mobile engineers who you can trust. Whether you are a new company building your first product or an established company that wants additional engineering help, G2I has the talent you need to accomplish your goals. Go to devchat.tv/G2I to learn more about what G2I has to offer. In my experience, G2I has linked up with experienced developers that can fit my budget, and the G2I staff are friendly and easy to work with. They know how product development works and can help you find the perfect engineer for your stack. Go to devchat.tv/G2I to learn more about G2I.
Video tutorials are a lot the same way. Now, you may find that you do video tutorials different from other people. I have a lot of friends that when they want to learn a new technology, they sign into a Pluralsight account and they go find the course on it and they walk through the course with the instructor, right? All right, now we're going to type this in, and what this does is this, this, and this. And they just go through the whole course. I can't do that. I just can't, right? And I know I can't. And so when I'm going to learn a new technology, yes, I use video, but I hit my limit about an hour and a half into the video tutorial. And so generally what I wind up doing is I will use video, right? So I'll go kind of skim through a book or read through a book real quickly about a topic if I want to just have a general knowledge of it. And then when I start to implement it, then I'll go do the first part of a tutorial. And then what happens is once I get far enough into the tutorial to where I'm past all the hairy stuff, which is usually set up, a lot of in new technology anyway, it's generally set up. It's like, how do I set up and organize my Vue app? How do I set up and organize my Elixir app, or Rails app or Express app or whatever, right? And, where are the pitfalls that they're going to walk, they're going to trace me around for a minute. And as soon as I'm past all that stuff, I go freestyling because I learn much better hands-on. And so then what I do is okay, how do I do this? And so then I spend time on the internet actually looking, okay, how do I, and so then it's, okay, well, you build this component in React and you do this and this and this, or if you use create React app, then here's how you write. And so you figure that out. Angular CLI is going to walk you through this, and here's a plugin that does it. And so you figure out these bits of things, and you figure out, okay, this is how I do it. Same thing with React Native. Since this is React Native Radio, I kind of generalized it to a lot of different technologies, but the idea is the same, right? So in React Native, it's here's how you build this, UI element. Here's how you hook it up to your JavaScript function on the back end to make it do what it's got to do, right? And so you figure that out. How do I test this? How do I test that? And, and so I do a lot of that hands-on. The books and the podcast for me generally do a lot more in the way of just giving me the conceptual ideas behind it, right? And so it's, okay, well, it's built on these systems, and these systems are based on these ideas. And so if you understand these ideas and you understand how the architecture works off of those ideas, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, that means that I'm naturally going to use it this way instead of that way. Boom, there you go. And so I tend to use a lot of all of them, but a lot of my focus really comes down to the hands-on stuff. So at the end of the day, I'm trying it out. I'm installing it and I'm playing with it and I'm poking at it and I'm getting there. And that's one thing that I do. Another thing that I do is I'll often go look at programs that other people have written that are doing similar things to mine. So, if one of the things that I want to build in React Native, I might wind up hiring somebody to do it just because I'm super busy. But one of the things I want to do is actually build an app for devchat.tv, right? And so I went and talked to some folks that that build React Native apps, and they said, well, your project with your budget is a little low for us, right? It's not enough work, and it doesn't, it's not going to make us enough money to consider doing it, right? And I get it, every business caters to a different customer set, and I wasn't their customer. But what they did tell me was, there are a lot of templates for React Native apps out there, and you could go and pick one up that does most of what you want, and then you can tweak it to do what you want, right? And yeah, you're probably going to have to build in your own data layer and things like that, but it's going to have most of the other stuff there and just available to run. And so, I went and looked at that, and that's worked out pretty well. I haven't done a whole lot with it yet. And I'm sure I'm going to run into some gotchas where I'm just going to be like, what did this person do here? But anyway, it's just this focus on something different that's just gonna, it's gonna get you there. But yeah, for me, it's a lot of hands-on. And I think for a lot of other developers, you're going to need some level of that, right? Because you're getting paid to write code, And so your practice is probably going to need to involve you writing some code. If you understand it on a conceptual level, you may not understand some of the nuances that actually get the code written. And so, yeah, I recommend to people that they try it out. But yeah, go listen to the other stuff. The podcast, we talk about a lot of things conceptually because we don't provide video. And if we did, it would just be talking heads. And so, you're not going to get a demo out of it. And that's not the point of our podcasts. Some of the other ones, it is hands-on. And so you're going to see somebody actually jump in and, and crank some code out. But you can go watch videos of people building stuff, and you can do a lot of that other stuff. You can go read other people's code. You can read books. You can watch videos. You can read blog posts. You can follow tutorials. And I recommend that you try them all and see where they fit in your learning program. And what you may find is, like me, you kind of get a blend of all of them depending on what stage you're at. Or you may find that, podcasts just don't do it for me, or books just don't do it for me, or blog posts, I lose attention. And so, you may find that videos are the way to go. That's kind of the way. But then you can sit down and you can flesh out your plan, right? Then you can actually sit down and you can say, okay, well, I need to learn these 6 things. And so I'm going to read a book on this one because it's highly conceptual. And then I'm going to write a couple of projects, just real simple ones that demonstrate these design patterns or whatever. And then I'm going to learn this next technology, and I'm going to be able to blah, 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 do it there. That's the other thing that's nice about the sample projects, is that when you get in and you start building a sample project, what you find out is you get that hands-on experience that tells you whether or not you really get it, right? Because if you're running into a lot of roadblocks, you don't understand it well enough yet to actually go and do it professionally. You're going to be Stack Overflowing the heck out of that thing just to figure out how to do it. And you're going to wind up doing a poor job of it. And so, just back into it and do it a few times. And that way you can come at it later on and say, I get this. I know how it goes together. I've done it a few times. And so now I can build it for work, or now I can build it into this open source project, or now I can go chase these other things. And you can go own the process and make it what you want to be. But that's essentially the process. But once you've learned it, then you can go and you can tell people that you've done it. And then, let's say that job mobility is an issue for you. Then when you get interviewed about it, you can say, well, I built these couple sample projects while I was getting to understand it. And then I built it into the app for the people I was working for. And, now I know it. And overall, you kind of get a good feel for all the rest of that stuff. Podcasting and blogging about things is another way where you're teaching other people or explaining things in a way where, other people should be able to pick up what you're doing. And that also helps. But for the most part, yeah, I really just recommend to people that they find the resources that are going to show them how to do whatever it is they want to do. Figure out what things work for you. Make sure you have some hands-on experience with it, and then go do it. And then maybe write a blog post or record a podcast or a video afterward, just to demonstrate that you get it. But all of that stuff is going to come together in order to help you learn it. And then once you know it, then what you can do is you can say, okay, well, I learned all these 6 things. And then you can actually go try and go out for the software architect job at your work. Or you can go apply to work with whoever it is that that does it. Or you can go move into these other areas and make those steps. And that's kind of the ultimate test of whether or not you've learned the right things and learned them well enough, is whether or not you get to that place that you want to get to. But I encourage people also to be a little bit patient. In a lot of cases, you can pick up these technologies a bit at a time, and you step up to the point where you can actually get what you want, but sometimes it takes some time. So, you may find that you're steadily improving, and that's enough to get you a raise, but it doesn't get you the job position you want because you're not ready. And so you'll figure that out. So you go apply for those team lead jobs, and they go, team lead, you're not ready yet. Here are the other things you need to learn. Or, you may wind up, trying to get that CTO position or whatever, and again, you're going to get the feedback, hopefully, that you need to go, okay, so what they were looking for is somebody that has a little bit more of this kind of experience, or somebody that's done a little bit more of these kinds of things. And you'll figure out, what the other steps are to get you there. or you may figure out that what they're looking for is completely different from what you want to do. And that's the other thing you keep in mind too is, whether you want to be a conference speaker or a CTO or a team lead or a software architect or some dude that talks about code on podcasts or whatever, is that different people are successful at it in different ways. And so you don't have to be the same kind of speaker as you see speaking at these conferences, right? You can put your own style on it, but you're still going to have some basic skills to get on the stage. Same with podcasting or blogging and being successful at it, is you don't have to sound like me in order to be a podcaster, but it does take a little bit of time to kind of find your voice and get everything together so that you can do it. And so, one company CTO is going to be different from another's. So all of these things come together and make it, a little bit tough to say this is the exact path. But the more that you can define, I want to be a CTO at this kind of company that runs in this kind of way, that's going to let me do these kinds of things, then you can really start to hone in, okay, where does that exist? And what skills am I going to need in order to get that job? And that's really going to help you more than anything else, because then you can make that plan and then you can figure out what the steps are to learn that stuff. And then you can sit down and you can self-evaluate and you can go, did I learn it well enough? Well, I can do it, right? Or I can demonstrate it, or I can teach somebody else it. And then from there, you move into the phase where you can actually get what you want. And so, when people come and they're like, how do I keep up? It's a process, but keeping up all on its own for no reason isn't useful. And it really isn't going to help you get where you want to go as much as having a plan for, this is where I'm trying to get to. And so this is what I'm going to go do and learn. That will help you so much more than the process of, just blindly reaching out for the latest and greatest thing. And so anyway, that's kind of my rant on that. I'm sorry it got broken up into two parts, but that's kind of the deal here. I am going to throw out a few picks here, and really I'm just going to kind of get to this idea more than anything else. So, the picks, I guess, can be the sources that I'm getting this from. But lately I've read a few books that just kind of all, I guess, compound on each other and bring me to this idea. And so the idea is essentially that sometimes it takes time to get what you want. And sometimes that time doing the right things is the essential ingredient to getting what you want. And what I'm talking about in particular is, so I've been out there running this podcast network for, I don't know, like Ruby Rogue started eight plus years ago. And so, I've had more than one podcast running for since then, basically. And, eventually we started devchat.tv, which, pulled everything in and ran everything off the same podcast network and stuff like that. And so, things have ramped up continually. And what's really fascinating about a lot of this is that it took time, right? And I still find myself falling into the trap where it's like, all I have to do is start posting on LinkedIn and I'm going to get a bazillion followers and a bazillion listeners. And it never works that way. The way that it works is I put my stuff out there in that way, and I pick up a handful here and a handful there and a handful here and a handful there. And eventually somebody will listen to some of those and then have a friend tell them about it. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to check that out. And, so doing the right things over and over and over again are eventually going to get you where you want to go. But there rarely ever is a silver bullet, right? There rarely ever is just that killer thing that just makes everything take off. Ruby Rogues and JavaScript Jabber grew a ton in the beginning out of word of mouth, and that worked for us because there weren't a lot of other options out there. But there are more and more things pulling for people's attention. And the other thing is that a lot of our audiences have kind of stayed static with size, so some people drop off and other people come in. And, as the community grows, yeah, we tend to trend upward, but it's not this astronomical growth anymore because, people have a lot of options. And a lot of people don't want to listen to work stuff when they're at home or in their leisure time. And then other people can't get enough of it because they love JavaScript to death and they love React Native to death. And so anyway, by doing kind of the slow burn things, right, we're taking the right steps. And yeah, I mean, if I see something that I think is going to make us just go to the moon and it's not going to cost me the company if I lose, then I'll go for it. But the other end of it is that a lot of this just picking up the momentum, right? And so we do pick up a few people off LinkedIn and then they go tell their friends. And so as that opens into a new network of people, we reach more people and our audience grows. And anyway, so the whole idea, so Good to Great. I was also listening to the Gary V audio experience, or, anyways, Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast. And he was talking to somebody and he said that, he talks to people and he tells them, you've got a great idea in, 6 or 7 years, that's going to be a big thing. And they get all disappointed because they want something tomorrow. And again, it just kind of pushes that idea that, that's what it takes. And, you got to get that idea. So anyway, that's my pick. Now I've got to go put my 3-year-old down for a nap. So I'm going to jump off. But anyway, those are basically my thoughts on keeping current. So have a good one. We'll have another episode next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.